The book was heavier than I remembered. I had carried it from the upper shelves just the day before, yet when my hands closed around its cracked leather cover that morning, it felt as though something inside had grown denser. It was my duty to clean the small reading room before the master awoke. The room had no windows, only a single oil lamp fixed to the wall, casting its light across dust-heavy air. Every morning, the same 12 shelves. Every morning, the same rows of books I was not meant to read. The book had not been here yesterday. It was deep brown, the leather dry as old skin, with faint tooling along the edges. Its spine had no title. I was sure I would have noticed it before. The shelves were part of my routine, and routines leave no room for surprise. I placed it back where I found it and finished my dusting. But as I turned away, the light from the wall lamp seemed to shift, as if bending toward that spot. That night, while the master was asleep and the halls lay silent, I returned to the reading room. I told myself it was only to look more closely, but my fingers were already curling around the book before I thought of any excuse. It opened stiffly, as if the pages had been pressed shut for years. The first page was blank, yellowed at the edges. The second page bore a few lines of faded ink. I leaned closer. The handwriting was uneven, as though written in haste. It was my name. Not my full name, but the name my mother used when I was small, the one no one here should know. Beneath it, a sentence, "You are awake at the wrong time." I turned the page. Another blank leaf. Then more writing, the letters sharp and darker now. It was a description of me, standing there in the lamplight, holding the book open in my hands. It described the tilt of my head, the slight tremor in my right thumb, the sound of my breath. The words stopped mid-sentence. I felt a draft, though the room had no windows. The flame in the wall lamp trembled but did not go out. I closed the book, slid it back into place, and returned to my bed. The next morning, I checked the shelves during my duties. The book was there. The binding seemed tighter now, as if it had been bound again in the night. For the rest of the day, I avoided the room, but each time I passed by the open doorway, I was aware of its presence. I began to imagine the faint sound of paper turning, though no one had entered. On the third night, I returned. The first page now contained a single word, "Stay." The next pages were filled with descriptions again, of things I had not yet done. Rising from my bed. Walking barefoot down the corridor. Opening the reading room door. All exactly as I had just done. And then, toward the end, the sentences began to bend. The handwriting leaned more steeply, as though the writer's hand shook. It wrote of my fingers tightening on the leather cover. Of the way my gaze dropped lower, toward a line I had not yet read. I felt my eyes sink to the bottom of the page. "You will not close the book this time." I set it down, the paper whispering under my hands. I stepped back, yet the words on the open page seemed darker now, clearer, as though they had been written just as I read them. The hallway behind me was darker than it should have been. The oil lamps were not lit. I could not remember whether I had passed them burning. I left the reading room door ajar and returned to my bed without touching the book again. But that night, I dreamed of the turning pages. Not with my hands, as though they moved on their own, a soft rhythm in the dark. When I woke, the morning air in my room carried a faint smell of lamp oil, and a single scrap of paper lay on my blanket. The ink was still wet. It was not my handwriting. It was the same curling script from the book. "You have missed a page." All that day, my work felt wrong. I dropped a basin in the washroom. I left the cloth soaking until the water turned cold. The other servants spoke little to me, glancing away when I tried to meet their eyes. That night, I returned to the reading room with the lamp in my hand. The book was gone from the shelf. It waited instead on the table in the center of the room, open to the middle. The pages seemed to sag, heavy with something that was not ink. The left-hand page described my hand reaching for the book. The right-hand page was blank. I stood there for some time. The lamp began to sputter. And then the first line appeared on the right-hand page. I saw it form, letter by letter, as though drawn by an invisible quill. Now look behind you. My fingers went cold. I did not move. The next sentence began to write itself. You are not alone in the reading room. I closed the book without finishing the sentence. My hands shook so badly I nearly dropped it. I left it on the table and fled, my steps too loud in the quiet corridor. When I reached my room, the lamp inside was already lit. I had not left it that way. On the desk by the bed sat the book, closed, its leather cover still warm to the touch. I no longer dust the reading room. Another servant has taken over the duty. I avoid the shelves, the smell of old paper, the sound of turning pages. Yet some mornings, when I wake, there is a single scrap of paper on my blanket. The script is always the same. The messages have grown shorter, though. The last one I found contained only 2 words, almost done.